Welcome to the 6 Miles to Supper podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Cox, and I've lost over 80 pounds with intermittent fasting 6 days a week, eating whatever I wanted at my meals, taking a cheat day every Sunday, and walking 6 miles a day. And I'm here to help you on your weight loss journey. In today's episode, I want to talk about anger and how it's actually a useful emotion. I know that this was a difficult thing for me to start to understand because I'm the type of person who wants to always be nice, and I kind of have that tendency to want to please everybody, and this was actually a really unhealthy kind of thing that I was doing, because what would happen previous to me working on this was when I would feel anger, I would immediately feel guilt. I kind of felt like anger was a bad emotion and that I should never feel anger. I should always, be able to just not feel that way. And what would happen is, because of my guilt and everything, I would kind of like just ignore my anger, and then I would end up, maybe doing a thing that I didn't really want to do, and then I would start to resent that. And that resentment, a lot of times, led me to emotional eating. Now, this wasn't completely obvious to me at first that I was doing this, but really where this I got a lot of clarity on this was when I read the book Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud and John Townsend. And in the book, they talk about how anger is a useful emotion. And what I found was when I really started to notice my anger, whenever it would happen, that flash of anger that you get sometimes, I found that anger a lot of times gave me clarity on what I actually felt about a situation. What I had to start doing was, when I would feel that initial anger, instead of, trying to stuff it down and start to feel guilty and then, do whatever it was that, I didn't really want to do, I started to just say, okay, this is giving me clarity right now. It is showing me something about my life that I either need to change or a rule I need to implement. And really, this does come down in most every situation to a needed boundary. And I would highly recommend the book Boundaries if you've never read it. Even if you have read it, I've read it multiple times, and every time I get something new from it. And it is from a Christian perspective. I am a Christian, so it doesn't bother me, but just so you know, if that would bother you, there's a lot of scriptural references and stuff, so that might make you, so you might not get as much from it if that's not your kind of thing. And the thing about boundaries is, like, putting up boundaries is hard. It is some of the hardest self-work I've had to do, because what a boundary is basically saying no. And I find it really hard to say no. I just do. It is one of the most difficult, most uncomfortable things I do. I'm an introvert on top of all that. And it's just difficult for me to explain my emotions or express my emotions. It's much easier to just say yes. That way you don't have to delve into, like, when you say no, why you're saying no. And actually, I would say you don't have to tell people why you're saying no. No is a complete sentence. And I learned that one from Dave Ramsey. But the thing that really helped me to get to that place where I could say no, because even though I knew, like, okay, saying no, here's how you put up a boundary, is about telling yourself no or telling other people no in some way, I still had trouble getting to that place of like, inside, I thought I should just be able to change how I feel. I shouldn't feel angry, therefore I shouldn't need this boundary. And that word "should" I have found to be kind of a red flag when I'm shoulding myself. It's not a good situation. It is inviting resentment into my life, which then makes my life worse. It makes it so that, I'm doing things that I do not want to do and that I'm resenting. And the little piece of advice that they give in the book that really helped me was they said, an internal no nullifies an external yes. And it basically goes back to when Jesus said, let your yes be yes and your no be no. And that sounds really simple, right? But I did start to see that, if I'm saying no in my heart, like if somebody asks me to do something and I think, I don't really have time. I don't want to do that. I just don't want to do it. if I say yes to that person, it's really a lie. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to say yes, and then I'm going to start to resent it. And I have learned so many times that if I try to ignore that, if I try to change that, things are just going to get worse and worse, and it's going to make my life worse. But I have to, as soon as I notice resentment, I have to root it out of my life. I have to say, okay, this is a situation that I must change, and it's always going to be uncomfortable. It's always going to be hard. I'll give you an example. Something that I did last year. I was doing this YouTube channel and making videos about intermittent fasting, and in the comment section, people were asking me to start a Facebook group, and I don't like social media. That's the first thing. Like I like my heart said no, because I don't like social media. I think it's bad to be on it. I don't want to like encourage people to use it more. And I had seen in other groups that I had been a part of that generally it wasn't a good, positive situation. And the thing is, I didn't listen to my intuition. I instead of listening to my heart, which was saying, no, don't do this, I said, yes, I'll do this. I feel like I should. And that was the thing. I felt like I should do it. And so I opened up the group, and, it grew relatively quickly, I felt like, and I was miserable. I was so miserable because, first of all, I then felt like I should be on social media more, that I should be in the group, trying to help people, which was then taking me away from my family. It was taking me away from just other parts of my own life, my own private life. And it was causing a negative kind of all around situation. And then I had to come to the conclusion, that I needed to make a change. And so I did that. And I repeated the same mistake a little bit later. I made a private Facebook group as part of the academy, which again was a mistake. And it was just one of those things I did because I thought I should, not because I knew that I needed to do this and it was something I wanted to do. It was just a should. And so I then had to make another uncomfortable decision to close down that Facebook group and change things around. And it's very hard. But I have found that if you do the hard thing, if you take that uncomfortable route, if you say, okay, this is going to require, a really awkward conversation, there may be some blowback from it. But it's important to do it because it makes your life better. Like I can tell you that as soon as I shut down the Facebook group, my life got immeasurably better. Like it was like this huge weight was off of me. And I think the reason why things get so much better once you actually take that uncomfortable action is because now your heart and what your actions are in alignment. And so there are other ways that this has happened in my weight loss journey that have been really helpful. And boundaries, telling yourself no, it's not always about telling other people no. A lot of times it's about telling yourself no. For example, with my 6 miles of walking, that's an example of a boundary I have put with myself with exercise. When I said 6 miles a day for myself, that was truly a boundary. Both, here is the amount of exercise I'm committed to, but no more than that. I in the past, my tendency had been to kind of like say one thing, like I would say, well, you need to walk, for a mile every day. But then what I really meant down inside was 1 is the bare minimum, and you better do a lot more than that, because if you don't, you're lazy. But instead, when I set up my own rules, I gave myself that boundary to say 6 miles, and 6 miles is it. There's no, I'm not expecting myself to do more. Now, if I go, over 6 miles, that's okay, but it's not this thing that I've done to myself where it's like, there's this other expectation that I need to surpass this boundary. In a way, I think of it as, this is a boundary that I've set up with myself, and I'm not going to require myself to work out more than that, to exercise more than that. But what I found is it creates resentment if you say one thing and really you mean another. So for example, if you say walk 1 mile a day, but you walk the mile and then you browbeat yourself like that, then you create this resentment because then you're, walking 2, 3, 4 miles a day and it never feels like enough. And then you're resenting yourself for, never letting yourself just have that boundary there. You never know where that boundary is. So setting up a boundary with exercise, I think, is very important. And of course, the same is true with food. Having some sort of boundary is necessary in order to lose weight, and then also to maintain it. You have to have some sort of rule, and it doesn't have to be intermittent fasting necessarily. It doesn't have to be anything too complicated either. An example of a boundary with food is just to say, I'm not going to snack. Like that's my rule. Maybe I will eat 3 times a day, but no snacks. Or I will only eat between the hours of, whatever you set up for yourself. The problem happens when you have no kind of rules at all, no boundaries at all. And then you start resenting, food. You start resenting yourself because you're eating too much. You have no clear boundaries with yourself. And for me, setting those first boundaries with myself is what helped me to be able to set more boundaries with people. And, obviously I still have a lot of work left to do on this, but I will say that every time I've done this, and we've had to do this in our marriage too, to set up boundaries both in between myself and my husband, to say, like for example, giving myself time to just get out and take a walk just by myself. That's an example of a boundary, being able to have some time just for myself. Every time we've done that, it has made our relationship better because it gives us those boundaries that we need. And, going back to anger, again, it's a useful kind of emotion. For example, let's say your husband, he comes home and he says, the guys want to go play a round of golf on Saturday, and I would like to do that. And if your initial reaction is anger that he would go and have time with his friends, that's a red flag. You shouldn't feel guilty about that. Instead of beating yourself up and feeling guilty, like, oh, I shouldn't feel that way, ask yourself, what's at the root of that? Like, is it that you are not giving yourself any time and you feel like that since you're not having any time to yourself, your husband shouldn't have any time to himself? And then once you figure that out, what's causing that anger there, then act on it. Maybe it's that, your husband's gone a lot and that weekend is like the only time you have to spend together. Then take some action and set up some boundaries and talk it out and say, well, here is why that's making me angry. We need to have some boundaries, maybe with like how often you go out with friends, or maybe it's like, since you're going to do that, I need some time so that it feels equal. But again, it takes that uncomfortable conversation. And if you're like me, those conversations are hard, even when it's with somebody you love and maybe you have a great relationship otherwise. It's just tough to verbally express these things. And, you need to have boundaries with your kids too. Like I found that, sometimes I would feel anger, I would think, why am I feeling so frustrated right now? And the thing that popped up for me was at that point in my life, I was not giving myself any time away from the kids. It was just, I was there, I was home all day, sometimes just by myself with the kids. And then my husband would come home and it would be, time for dinner. And then by the time it was all said and done, I had no time just to be by myself. So instead of just letting that fester and being angry all the time or just occasionally that anger bubbling up, I learned like, okay, that means I need to take some action here. I need to get myself outside for a walk or go down into the basement and just get away from everybody. Whatever it was, I needed some time. And again, it made my life better. Every time we've had that uncomfortable conversation or done that uncomfortable thing, it has improved the quality of our lives and it's lessened resentment. And if you're like me, you'll probably find there's like boundaries that are needed in every area of your life, finances, social media. It's all about having boundaries and listening to that anger. Like if you get on social media and something's making you angry, learn from that. What is it actually that's causing that anger? And then root out that resentment, whatever it is. Maybe it's just that, all this stuff is invading kind of your life. When you go on social media and you see all these posts that are making you angry, you can hide that. You can take action. You can, press hide. You don't have to unfriend people if you don't want to. Although I do. I will either unfriend them or block them or, just hide them from my newsfeed, depending on what the situation is. But you can control that. And I would encourage you that's a thing that would actually make your life a lot better, to just notice when you're getting angry and then do something about it. And just never let it fester. Because again, that can so easily lead into emotional eating. It certainly did for me. And I take it as a big red flag, if I start to notice that while I'm eating, I start to think about something that, is bugging me. And usually what happens is if I'm eating quickly, that's a big key for me. It's like, wait, something's on my mind here. And then I have to slow down and figure out what's going on. What's the thing that's playing in my mind over and over again. So I hope that helps you, that going forward, when you feel anger, that you'll take that as, this thing that will give you clarity, that will show you something that needs to change, a boundary that's needed. Remember, no is the one-word boundary. It's about telling either yourself or someone else no. And again, if you would like to read the book Boundaries, I'll leave a link to it in the show notes. It's been a game changer for me. It has really improved my life. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Do you want to lose the weight without getting rid of the foods you love and that you'll go back to eating again anyway? My book, The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting, teaches you how to practice intermittent fasting so that you lose the weight sustainably and keep it off for good. You can get the audiobook read by me for free when you sign up for your 30-day trial of Audible. The link is in the show notes. And if you've gotten value from this podcast and you'd like to let other people know about it, it would be great if you could leave a review on either iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks.